All right, so the judgment in the Manchester Municipal fraud case was handed down on May 15, with 5 of the 7 defendants being found guilty of various charges. Joining us now to tell us what does this mean for corruption in Jamaica is Professor Trevor Munroe, head of the National Integrity Commission. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Delia.
How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Prof. It's good to see you. I know you must be happy well, let's just say you are happy that justice seems to have been served in this case. Yes, can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, I
All
would
right.
say very much so, Empress, because the case represents one of the few occasions when massive public funds, your funds and my funds, taxpayers' money, has actually been stolen and there has been justice done. And we await the sentencing to ensure that the sentences have been so exemplary within the government and the judiciary's guidelines, so that others who may similarly be tempted or who have been engaged in that practice will understand that corruption and crime does not pay.
All right. Prof, for our viewers, can you give us a little background on the case, please? What happened?
Well, first of all, a background on where we are in relation to Jamaica. Let's bear in mind, Empress and Delia and your viewers, that every year, Jamaica, the Jamaican people, we're losing around 95 billion Jamaican dollars to various forms of corruption, mainly in the area of procurement. Now, what $95 million means, just to break it down a bit, the entire health budget in this grave and unprecedented crisis facing us, where so many of us are now unemployed, underemployed, wondering where we're going to earn a living. The entire health budget for 2020, 2021 is about $80 billion.
Ooh.
That's less we are losing in any one year over the last many years to corruption. So we're talking about literally a life and death matter in getting better dealing with corruption. And so far, Jamaican people over many, many years have not been confident that the government and the authorities are doing enough. Our international partners share that view. The IMF, in their last major pronouncement on Jamaica, indicated that, look, you guys have to do much better in dealing with corruption. So that's the background and the context in which the authorities in the Manchester Municipal Corporation let down the taxpayers of Manchester, as well as the rest of Jamaica,
Yes.
in getting away with $400 million, or so they thought, until this case took place. Exemplary investigations by the major organized crime anti-corruption agency, Financial Investigation Division, exemplary prosecution by the special prosecutors assigned by the Director of Public Prosecutions, exemplary summing up by the judge, and of course, the judiciary needs to be complemented by the fact that they have the live stream, showing that the judiciary, while obviously having to be independent, recognizes that they are accountable to the Jamaican people and therefore should be responsive to our interests. And let us not forget the witnesses who are courageous enough to come forward and tell what they know, so that this trial needs to mark really a new beginning in our effort to deal more effectively with corruption, so that more can get to the people and less to the pockets of the corrupt.
I wanted to ask you, Professor, and you alluded to it just a while ago, how do you think that this will move us forward in the way that we tackle corruption? I think there is a perception in Jamaica that, it's another scandal, it's not going to go anywhere, no one is going to face the penalties for it. But this may suggest that we are looking at it in a different way. How do you see this impacting existing cases or cases that may come up in the future?
I think it depends a lot on what we do and what we say, Delia, insofar as, first of all, we'll see to what extent it marks a beginning, a new chapter, in relation to the sentences handed down. But very importantly, in relation to the recovery of the stolen assets the stolen property from the Jamaican people. If that happens, then thereafter, if we move to strengthen the independence of the investigative bodies which did such good work, particularly the major organized crime anti-corruption agency, they have regulations which are to come to Parliament to strengthen their autonomy, their independence. We need to ensure that that happens as quickly as possible. But perhaps most of all, we need to be heard, our voices, the media, the man in the street, persons of interest in the better combat of corruption in relation to that outstanding matter where hundreds of millions of dollars were discovered by the Auditor General being lost at Petrojam across successive administrations, not just this one, but going back. That investigation report was completed in July of last year. We're now in May. We haven't heard a word from the Director of Corruption Prosecutions at the Integrity Commission as to what's happening there. That's something that we need to insist to get an update. Are prosecutions pending? If they are not, why not? Transparency and accountability demands as much. So a lot depends on the authorities taking encouragement from witnesses coming forward. A lot depends on us recognizing that every dollar lost to the public purse is a dollar lost to our health budget. It's
Yes.
a dollar lost to recruiting more community health workers. It's a dollar lost to making our schools more digital ready so that students are not disadvantaged in the way that they are. Once we recognize that corruption is not just something out there, but actually impacts our conditions and terms of life, then I think more of us will get involved, speak out, and have a new beginning in the combat of corruption in Jamaica.
Thank you, Prof. Talking about a new beginning, what is the future of some of these cases? We realize that the verdict was streamed live. When we talk about transparency and accountability, is this where we're going now? I mean, cases are not closed down because of COVID, but when we talk about live verdicts being streamed live, is this a new thing for Jamaica, and what does it look like in the future?
It's very new and it's very commendable. The current Chief Justice built on the foundations laid by previous Chief Justices. They sent the guidelines of conduct for the judiciary, make it very clear that the judges are independent, but they're also accountable to the public. And to that extent, the public has an interest in seeing and knowing what's going on in the courts in real time. And to that extent further, the fact that the live streaming has begun in this case, and you might remember in an earlier case as well, when judgment was handed down, I can't recall specifically now, but clearly there's a new tendency to have live streaming so that we can be aware fully of what's happening in our courts, which after all are the courts, the third branch of government, equal to the legislature, equal to the executive, and therefore one that we need to be fully aware of what's going on there. So I think it's a new beginning. Chief Justice and the judges need to be commended on carrying forward the work previously laid by their predecessors.
I wanted to ask before we go, Professor, how does this impact the way we do business in Jamaica? Because yes, we have 7 people who are in court for 400 million, but that 400 million could have been pilfered without there being red flags along the way. In itself suggests that there are some loopholes and some leaks in the way we do business at that level. Coming out of a case such as this, are we hoping that we will establish new protocols, new procedures, that we'll find ways to plug some of those holes that exist?
I think that's a very important observation there. For example, one area that needs to be strengthened is the whistleblower legislation. Technically, it's called the Protected Disclosures Act, which allows protection for persons in public sector entities, indeed anywhere, who see wrongdoing, who see corrupt acts, but who are afraid to come forward for all kinds of reasons. Commendably, these witnesses were not. But that Protected Disclosures Act, whistleblower legislation, can be strengthened in a number of ways. One of them is to ensure that whistleblowers who come forward are guaranteed automatic admission to the witness protection program where they're desired, and secondly, where there's provide an incentive for them, as happens in so many other countries, some kind of a cash incentive to come forward and say what you know. So that's one area that needs to be strengthened and which has been pending for a long time. A second one, very importantly, in the UK and other jurisdictions, they now have a piece of legislation called the Unexplained Wealth Order. What that means is where an individual manifests a style of life and possesses assets which seem to be out of keeping with their known legal reasonable sources of income, the authorities, the National Crime Agency in the case of the UK, in our case, if we had that, the Financial Investigation Division or MOCA could apply to the court to get an unexplained wealth order. And that individual, perhaps owning many apartment complexes without any clear explanation as to where that funding comes from, has to answer the question, explain where your wealth comes from, and if the explanation is not satisfactory, then of course charges could be laid. So in those two areas, the unexplained wealth order and the protected disclosures are being strengthened. I believe that we will be in a better position to make this Manchester verdict really a new beginning in Jamaican people's engagement to get more effective results from the combat of corruption.
Wow, thank you, Prof, for joining us, and I hope everything is okay with the NIA. We wish you all the best. Thank you for being a voice and advocating for accountability and helping us to end corruption in this country. In the streets, we call it informer. In the corporate world, we call it whistleblower. But guess what? Each one is helping to bring some order to the country. So be a whistleblower, be an informer, because we need to make sure that it's the thing level, level up, fix up the country, and stop stealing from the public purse. Please, all right? We have many needs. Professor Trevor Munroe, head of the National Integrity Action.